Welcome to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. I'm James Groves, and along with my business partner, Bill Dement, we want to share our journey as small business owners with you. As owners of Hole in the Wall drywall repair, we will attempt to peel back the curtain of owning a small business in the trade service industry and talk about the many adventures of owning a small business. Hey, Bill.
James, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hey, happy holiday season to you.
Holy moly, this year's almost over.
Yes, it is. Have you noticed, though, how busy the holiday seasons are?
Boy, do I ever.
I know that I have a lot of extra events this holiday season. We traveled earlier. We have some family coming in later. Mm-hmm. We have parties to attend. And then we have a lot of business things going on as well. But just a hectic time of year. Have you noticed?
Yeah, and everything's moving earlier and earlier, right? So Thanksgiving ends, obviously Christmas music starts, if that has already started. But even our own company holiday Christmas party was like the first week of December, getting things done early.
Yeah.
Everything's done earlier because we're trying to cram so much in to such a small amount of time. Because really, Halloween hits, and you've got less than a month for Thanksgiving, and then after Thanksgiving, you're now in the full-blown Christmas season.
Yes.
And then as business owners, we're trying to wrap up the end of the year, making sure we end the year on a high note for our employees and for, for taxes and, you name it.
Well, I noticed that my schedule's busier. Just as an observer, I've noticed that your schedule is pretty busy this holiday season. Everybody seems to be moving at 100 miles an hour, even in traffic. I mean, the traffic here in Orlando is already gonzo.
Yeah, garbage.
But the people seem even more intense. Heaven help you if you get stuck in a parking lot with shoppers that are desperate to get to wherever is the next thing on their list. It's really a phenomenon.
Yeah, it's true, and it's true. And what I think is important that this podcast is kind of just us reflecting on some of those things. So I'm excited to get into it.
Yeah, so let me just launch into it by saying, with all this activity going on, one of the things that's been on my mind, and it's a subject I've known about for a while, but I just found myself reflecting on it recently. And I remember the first time I heard it, I thought to myself, that's an odd concept, but it's really not if you think it through. And it's the concept of keeping margins in your life. Margins, how would you describe it?
Yeah, boundaries.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
I guess one of the ways I like to look at it is think about a typed sheet of paper, okay? You don't notice the boundaries at the top and the side so much unless they're not there. Have you ever picked up a sheet of paper and it just started all the way at the left and went all the way to the right?
Yeah.
It's difficult to read even, The margin on a typed sheet of paper, it even though it's kind of subtle, it does serve a purpose. It frames the text. It keeps the sentence from starting on the left side of the page, too early, and it gives it some structure, and it keeps it from flowing off the side of the page on the right side. This is the value of those margins. It keeps order and prevents chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy because it does give you the ability to kind of listen, stay in the line, stay. Because when you start bleeding outside of those lines, things get a little sloppy.
Yeah, they do. Thinking about margins, I think about areas of our life where we really need to protect the margins. And I guess another aspect I think about the margins is they don't tend to be the main events in your life. You know what I'm saying? It's not the work. It's not the trip. It's not the party. A margin tends to be the time before, in between, and after. It's not the main event, but again, subtle, but really important to the main events. For instance, if we're going to do a podcast, we usually take a little time beforehand. And sometimes if we have a guest, we will sit and chat with them a little while and kind of warm ourselves up and warm up the guests. Well, that's margin. That's giving that guest and ourselves time to get acclimated, to get our thoughts together instead of just running headlong into it. Because again, if you're not planning some of this stuff, then you get chaos. The margins are the things in between and around. Actually, I was thinking about my son, Zane. He actually works for us, and he's a what some people would call an old soul. He's just kind of mellow. So when he drives on the highway, he says to me one day, he says, "Dad, I like to drive in the pocket." What do you mean by that? And he says, well, when you get in traffic sometimes and everybody's just racing to get around everybody else, it's very intense. And he said, instead of driving at that high speed, he said, I go 1 or 2 miles an hour below. And I look for a spot where there's nobody for, a quarter of a mile in front of me or a quarter of a mile behind me. That's my pocket. Mm-hmm. He said, I don't have the stress of somebody trying to pass or come around me. I don't have the stress of trying to get around somebody else. We termed the phrase when we were driving to Atlanta recently, traffic Tetris. You're just like moving up, moving over, moving up, moving back over. It's like playing the old Tetris game. Oh, yeah. You're just trying to, but what happens is after a period of time driving like that, it's just stressful. You just get stressed out.
Oh, it's weary.
So his strategy is this pocket. And he told me this a couple of years ago. So I thought, well, let me give it a try. And man, was he right. We drove to Atlanta recently, which is from where we are. It's about 7.5, 8 hour trip. And I drove in the pocket. Once in a while, I had to pass somebody. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people were passing me, and I was driving either the speed limit or 1 and sometimes 2 miles an hour under the speed limit. Listen, if you do the math, I see the face you're making.
Yeah.
If you just do the math, okay, if I drive 5 miles an hour faster, I'm only going to get there 5 miles every hour sooner. And then what are you going to do when you get there? You're going to stand around. You're going to talk. You're going to, whatever. So
listen, as long as there's not a line of cars behind you trying to get away, I'm full. I'm bored. I'm the guy that I'm going to Tetris till I find my pocket, and then I'm going to let everyone else pass me.
Well, I offer it as a form of margin.
Yeah.
Because if there's an event in front of you and you're right on somebody's bumper,
you can't react.
Playing Tetris, you probably will react. We usually do. Mm-hmm. But if I've got somebody that's 500 yards ahead of me, I have a lot more time, So that margin provides
definitely
protection.
Less stressful. Definitely less potential of error.
Yeah. And that falls into the margins being something that protects us, in a sense. They kind of serve as guardrails to establish safe limits is what they do. And that's like on our time, on our energies. We all know somebody who's just working all the time trying to get ahead. I even know several people who work multiple jobs and they're always working to get ahead, but they don't keep any margins, and they're burning all their margins just working several jobs. And again, it's a critical function. You don't have time to decompress. You don't have time to recharge your batteries, which is super important. I do notice that people who have low batteries, they tend to have a short fuse. They tend to be impatient with people. It's a negative.
Did you know that there are over 140 million homes in the U.S.? 97% of them have walls and ceilings that are built using drywall. The drywall repair industry is simply enormous, valued at over $13 billion a year. We're hole-in-the-wall drywall repair, and for years we have been perfecting the art of repairing drywall, developing and refining our systems, and strengthening our brand. Our business model is simple, scalable, and easy to learn. We believe it's a real game changer. We are successful drywall repair pros who decided to take our repair business to a higher level, growing both our franchise training and support to industry-leading standards. You'll benefit from our vast experience helping your franchise hit the ground running and achieve success quickly. We'll give you access to our marketing team that has created strategic programs designed to get your phone ringing and booking new business fast. Join a fast-growing leader in an exciting dynamic segment of the home service industry by franchising with Hole-in-the-Wall Drywall Repair. Start building your own business and securing your own financial future today.
I remember when my kids were young, talking about keeping margins with your time. When my kids were young, they used to have a lot of free time. I guess it seemed to them like their life was nothing but margins. Their life was nothing but one big margin because mom and dad were taking care of all the important stuff, so they just did whatever they wanted. They did have a lot of time on their hands, and they had time to do things they wanted, things that were fun, and they also had time to do things that were required because we required things of our kids. They had time to play with friends. They had time to do their chores, which we assigned to each of them. They had time to do their homework. They had time to play team sports, which I think all but one of my kids did. But you know what they would do, James? They would absolutely burn through all of their margin just having fun. So when they came from school, they fling their shoes off and then just start having fun right away, okay? That I always remember this picture. They run through the front door, fling their shoes off, take their backpack off, and run out the back door onto the trampoline.
Right.
They're just going to have fun until mom says, hey, you guys got to do something. But the problem was they were using up all their margin. Now, when it was time to leave for school the following morning, okay, they're completely out of time. Okay, it's time to go. Mom's getting in the car. It's time to go to school. Now they're going to realize, wait a minute, we don't have any margin left. And then panic began to set in because now suddenly and at the last moment, they need to pack a lunch. They need to find their shoes.
Where is that shoe I flung off?
They need to eat some breakfast. Oh, and do last night's homework. So the result was pretty predictable. It was chaos and frustration.
Yeah, I used to I had it timed when I was a kid. It was like, all right, I know I can get to school in 7 or 8 minutes. And I know I have to be in school at this certain time so I could sleep and give myself 15 minutes.
This sounds familiar.
I could brush my teeth, use the bathroom, maybe take a shower,
mm-hmm.
and then get in the car within just enough time to get to school to be in my seat by the time the bell rings. I never gave myself any room for error.
Well, in my mind, part of maturing and growing up, and I use my kids as an example because I've seen them from 0 to, now some of them are upwards of 25 years old. I've seen them mature out of that where they're not using all their margin up front. There was a system along the way to notice that they weren't doing what they were supposed to be, and we used to have a statement in our house: are you doing the right thing or are you doing the easy thing right now? Are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? My suggestion is, if you know we need to leave in 20 minutes, go ahead and get yourself ready. Go ahead and get your lunch packed. Go ahead and get your book bag ready to go. And then if you have 5 or 10 minutes, get your phone out and play a game. Mm-hmm. Now you got margin. Don't burn all your margin on the front end.
Yeah.
Get all your stuff done first, then burn your margin.
I like it.
One other thing I want to touch on, really important, is the area of finances. And in my mind, that's somewhere that safe margins are a must. Setting aside money to provide financial margin can not only provide peace of mind, but can avert a disaster. I think grandma had it right back in the day when she said, save for a rainy day when it comes, not if it comes, because the rain is going to come.
It's going to come.
People who get caught flat-footed, they've used all their margin of finance on something else, other things. I mean, sometimes it's necessity. Lord knows things are so expensive right now that people frequently have to use a lot of their money just keeping a roof over their head and eating, and providing for family. But in as much as it's possible, actually, I was watching a show last night. It was the Antiques Roadshow. Mm. And I was taken because this guy brought a painting, and his dad was really into reading books that had illustrations. And this was an illustration from a book. And it was pirates rowing up to the side of a big boat, and one guy has been called over and he's looking over the edge. And turns out the darn thing was worth $125,000. Wow. I mean, the guy it was called the crying episode because everybody who got a price was crying on this particular show. But he told a story of how his dad used to give his mother money to go buy groceries. And for 2 years, she skimmed $5 a week off that grocery budget and she put it away. And then one Christmas, she had the money for him, and she told him, you go down to this gallery and buy a picture, because he loved those pictures so much. So he went down there, and here's somebody, she'd taken part of her margin to do a greater good with it, and she saved that for her husband who had earned the money, and he bought that picture. And then all these years later, this picture is suddenly worth $125,000. The guy's like, man, my dad would be so happy. But we all know people who either don't understand the value of having a financial margin. They work hard, play hard. They live, a high spending lifestyle. They consume everything they earn. I can certainly point to several people I know like that, never considering that a disaster could come. And they can. So I think it's really important that we keep margins. I mean, there's a lot of different ways. People will say you need to have an emergency fund. You need to have investments. You need to keep some cash on hand, things like that. And in as much as is possible, I'm certainly in favor of that. Yeah. And again, it provides the same guardrail that you have with your time. It prevents chaos and disorder if something happens in your life. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, in business, if you're running the bank account empty every single week, right? Payroll hits and all of a sudden you don't have the money. Listen, you have lines of credit for those things. You have the ability to kind of cushion your blow. Mm-hmm. But if you always run in the red, you run into the reality that you just don't have the money to continue the business.
Right.
So know that those times will happen. So when you're feasting, when things are really good and you've had a big win, a good contract, whatever it is, you have to set aside some contingency money.
Yes.
Because there will be a time. Listen, all the biggest brands have a downward cycle occasionally.
Absolutely.
It happens.
Yeah.
And so don't leave yourself stranded so you're not having to worry about it or stress.
Yeah, and just day-to-day things happen in a business. Sometimes you've actually done the work but haven't been paid for it yet. You're waiting on it. Sometimes there is buying new vehicles or large, expensive repairs on vehicles or purchases of other equipment.
Sure, lawyer bills.
Yeah.
The customer who is dragging their feet, making their payments, maybe a warranty issue that pops up. Those are all things you have the contingency for.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think it's important to keep margins.
Well, I think there's a big benefit to it. If you just look at it for just a quick second, if you just focus on a little bit, we talked about aggregation of marginal gains.
Yeah.
You don't have to come up with a ton of money or set aside big swaths of time. Listen. There's margins for a reason. You have that margin because occasionally, go look at my Bible, and in my margins, there's lots of little notes and highlights. Those margins are very useful.
Yeah.
But if you're always bleeding into it, then you don't have any use of those margins for anything else, right? So occasionally when you're making notes, you make notes on the side of the paper, or occasionally, I'm going to stay up a little bit later, watch that football game that I really should go to bed for, but I'm going to enjoy this evening. You just figure out what that is. So you have the ability to do that. But if you're always just buffering in too tight. Now, I've seen people who have done it too tight. I've got guys that are just like, it's 5 o'clock, got to go. Yeah, but you're a small business owner, right? So I want to caution everyone, this is not just take your time and pace yourself and then all these miraculous things. You have to lean into your job. You have to focus on it, but still build yourself in a little bit of energy time, a little bit of me time, a little bit of family time, right? Because what's the benefit of it? If you take care of yourself, if you feed yourself better and you're healthier, if you take care of your time so your mental energy is not expelled. I really have a hard time with people who complain. The internet warriors are all the same. They spend all of their time and energy worrying about somebody else's problem, not their own problem. And then all of a sudden, they want people to look at their problem when they finally have one. Stop worrying about other people's problems. Worry about your problem. This way you have the energy to react when something does happen. If you take care of yourself, then you're winning. You're able to be, for us, okay, as business owners, as fathers, as husbands. If we take care of ourselves mentally, spiritually, physically, financially, we now become a better business partner and owner, a better employer, a better father, a better spouse.
Yeah.
We become better volunteer work for our community, no matter what that is. We become better. It's a win-win.
Yeah,
situation.
and you're doing it out of a position of health and a position of having surplus. Listen, if I don't have any surplus finances on my own, I certainly can't help anybody else. I've heard a financial guy actually point out that one reason people can't help other people is because they just don't have enough to kind of do their own thing. Now, maybe they just don't make enough, or maybe they've misspent what they have. But anytime you see somebody being generous, they're typically being generous from a position of abundance. They have plenty. They have some to share. And I think that's critical with the margins, is making sure that with our health, and we don't really touch on that one a lot, but man, staying healthy, taking time to go walk or, eat a little better, or whatever that margin is with your health. I agree with you. All those things that you mentioned makes you a better father, spouse, partner, human. I mean, it just makes you a better person, I think.
Yeah. And if you're always letting someone else set your time, one of the things that we can be very busy. We're in a lot of networking groups. Last week, I had 4 events scheduled in 2 days, and I had to decide, all right, which event am I going to go to on this day? Which event am I going to go to on this date?
Right.
And both of those events were after hours. All those events were 6 p.m., 7 p.m. at night.
My goodness. That's after a day's work.
After a day's work. And so I decided, I will choose this one event. So I went to the BNI meeting. That was a special meeting for me, and I enjoyed that. It was lovely. And I did not go to the Chamber of Commerce event that I wanted to go to.
Right.
So I made that choice.
Yes.
But mentally and physically, I could have done part of both.
Yes.
But it was going to go crazy. The following day, I had 2 more events. I decided to not do any Because back-to-back after-hours events after a long day, my wife's sitting at home by herself.
Yeah.
Sure, she can take care of herself, but I like being with my family.
Sure.
I like being with my wife and my kids. And then I was a little mentally fried, and I had a little bit of a headache, and I could have pushed my way through it, but I don't think it would have done me any good to go to those events not fully intact.
Yeah.
You know? And so you just had to make that choice.
You
So
establish a guardrail to protect your time.
Absolutely. And then not allowing someone to suck up your own time, your own energy, your own finances, even when you're driving. I mean, people get so upset when they're driving. You are in control of how you react to situations.
Yeah.
So just make those times more, pick your battles. Don't always have to be in a fight with somebody. Don't always have to spend every dollar on the last cup of coffee.
And frankly, you don't have to win every argument.
You don't. Absolutely. You can it's okay to lose an argument.
It's okay.
And it's okay, even if you know you're right, to just let the other person win. It's fine.
Yes.
You've done nothing but benefit them, benefit yourself,
Correct.
and reduce your stress level. You have to find a way, especially in these busy times of years. You can get depressed, you can get upset. Listen, we're all given a set of gifts, and we're all given a set of time on this earth. Don't waste your time on things that really don't matter. Getting upset at an inanimate object.
Yep.
Thank you. It makes no sense. That microwave, that water heater, that they don't care how you feel, but you do, and your spouse, people around you feel. When I'm upset, you feel it.
Yeah.
When my wife's upset, I feel it.
Yeah.
When you're having a bad day, I understand. I feel that day from you.
Yeah, sure.
So that's why it's important to align yourself with people who can kind of love you where you are as well. A little off tangent, but I really appreciate this margins talk because it kind of helps you put things in check because we have the ability to burn ourselves out. And it'll work for a time, but it's not going to work long term.
Yeah. Well, it is a fallacy that you can exhaust all of your mental, physical, and financial energies and maintain a health. And maintain a healthy position in life, you just can't. And it's so often you hear that people, they just go and go and go. But that's what got me thinking about it, just observing people around this time of year. And frankly, we've just been busy. And so it's just got me thinking about establishing those guardrails and protecting the margins in my life.
Well, Bill, I think this is going to be our last podcast for 2023. I think that we're going to end on a high note. I think that we're going to be able to spend the next couple of weeks with our family and relax.
Like that.
And I think that we're going to come back.
Getting some holiday margin.
I've got the guest list for next year, Bill, and we have got some whoppers coming.
Excellent.
We've got some return people. We got some fresh people coming in with some great ideas. Hopefully we'll have some franchisees. We'll have our new franchise director come in and talk. I mean, we've got so much on the horizon. There's so much at play here at Hole in the Wall. I'm excited about the new advertising things we're doing, the new commercial that's out. It's kind of neat. We actually had an event here yesterday where we invited members of a nonprofit that we work with to come and do their annual meeting here in our facility. And the feedback that we got, like, wow, you guys got a lot going on here. Look at this training lab. Look at your, it's just nice to sit back. My son is in town for the holidays. He worked for us back in 2019. And he's not seen anything that we've done, even with the old warehouse that we've revamped and refreshed. And I brought him in yesterday, and he's like, what? You guys did this in just a couple of years? Like, it's amazing how, because we're in it. We see it every single day.
Yeah.
Something fresh happens, and it's just par of the course for us. But if you leave and come back, you kind of go, wow, there's something going on. So I'm really excited for this next season at Hole in the Wall. We've got a lot of great things happening. So I can't wait to share it with all of our listeners as well. So
it's going to be
Merry Christmas to you, Bill.
Fun time. Merry Christmas to you as well.
Have yourself a great New Year's. And
all right.
We'll
look forward to doing this some more in the new year.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. We'd like to thank you for listening to the Hole in the Wall Business Podcast with Bill and James. We'd love for you to join our Facebook group and keep the conversation going. If you'd like to learn more about us and our business, check us out at holeinthewall.com. If you'd like to learn more about how to start a Hole in the Wall franchise, go to holeinthewallfranchising.com.